Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about Same Household, Different Bill, how sectors are tackling financial hardship together. So I can see that there are people who are currently joining us, so thank you so much for joining us today. And as people are still trickling in, I shall go through a little bit of housekeeping. Now, for those of you who are used to coming to our webinars, you're pretty used to this little test, but just to make sure that everyone can hear me okay, if you could react with the little emoji button in the bottom left corner of the screen. Yes, fantastic. Great, thank you so much. Oh, and I recognize a few names. Thank you. Wonderful. Now, at the end of the webinar, there will be a very short survey that will pop up as you leave the webinar. We would be very grateful if you could take a couple of minutes to answer it, just to make sure that we can keep improving for future sessions. Now, we will aim to finish by 11:30. We will be keeping all of the questions for the end of the webinar during a sort of Q&A and panel discussion. However, you can ask your questions at any time. If you look on the right side of your screen, there is a panel there, and there is an icon that allows you to ask questions. Now, if ever you are late or you have to jump off halfway through, don't worry. The slides and the recording will be sent to every registrant. Also, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn or to register for our newsletter just to keep up to date with any upcoming webinars. All right, now a little bit of context about policy and practice. So some of you again may have joined some of our past webinars, but if you haven't, so as you know, every day millions of households are forced to choose between eating and paying essential bills. So what our platform does is that it provides proactive and efficient solutions that strengthen financial resilience and mitigate safeguarding risk. So we work with different organizations to tackle challenges that millions of families face: debt, housing, safeguarding risks. We work with councils, housing providers, utilities, as you will see today, as well as the finance sector companies, and the third sector organizations and policymakers. We also work for individual people who use our free benefits calculator on gov.uk to identify and claim support. Now, today you will be hearing from our lovely panel of speakers, and I'm going to invite all of our speakers to come on screen if you would like to introduce yourselves. Wonderful. Hi, Ian. Hi, Rob. Wonderful. Hi, Nicky.
Hi, everyone.
Good. Hello. So let's go in the order of the agenda then. So Rob, you're going to be doing the intro. Do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Green. Yeah, my name's Rob Johnson, and I'm Head of Partnerships here at Policy and Practice. I've been with Policy and Practice now for nearly 2.5 years, and I was ultimately brought into the organisation to replicate the success we've seen in the public sector, in the private sector, namely the credit and collection sector, in terms of bringing income maximisation into customer journeys.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And Ian, would you like to introduce yourself too?
Yep, thanks, Green. So Ian Cheatle, Senior Manager in Nationwide's Customer Propositions team. So I guess as a team, we try and deliver some of these really standout sort of customer services initiatives, etc., that don't fit into typical product lines at Nationwide. So things that aren't savings, mortgages, current accounts, etc. So things like the Fairer Share payment, we announced the 4th one of those just last week. So maybe there's some people on the call that might be receiving that £100 in a week or two's time. So that's a really standout initiative that demonstrates how we give value back to our customers. But alongside that, we also do smaller initiatives that, whilst they don't impact millions of people like Fairer Share does, for those that they do benefit, they can have a really good and really significant impact. So the work we've done with Policy and Practice on the benefits calculator, which I can go into a bit more detail later on, is a good example of that. So that's what me and the team in Nationwide do.
Fantastic. So I believe the person who will be speaking after you, Ian, will be Ed. Do you want to say a few words, Ed?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Ed from Policy and Practice. I'm one of the account managers here. I look after a lot of our Better Off Calculator clients, from charities to housing to utilities with Nicky, and off to other organisations like employment as well. My passion project has been trying to connect all these organizations into one place within one ecosystem and improving a lot of the vulnerable processes that households have to go through. So yeah, that's been my passion projects.
Nice, and which we will be hearing more about today. And then finally, last but not least, Nicky.
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm Nicky Chitty. I'm the Affordability and Vulnerability Lead at Southern Water. I've been with Southern Water for just under 3 years, and I've been working with policy practice for almost all of that time as well. So it's been a privilege. My role is about making sure we have the right support in place for our customers, and that support reaches the right people.
Fantastic.
And I'll be talking a little bit more about that later on in my presentation.
And I'm very much looking forward to that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on screen to all introduce yourselves. And I believe now we shall be going straight into the introduction. Rob? I shall hand over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Corinne. Yeah, morning all. So today, you may be wondering why we have two organisations, such as Southern Water and Nationwide Building Society, on one webinar, given that they operate in totally different sectors. And hopefully that will come together and make sense by the end of the webinar. If not, I'm probably going to be in a lot of trouble. So yeah, we're talking today about the same household, different bill. And what do we mean by that? So on average, a household will deal with 6 or 7, maybe 8 different organisations in terms of finances. The diagram here shows that perfectly. So broadband providers, maybe debt collection agencies, energy providers, etc., etc. And what we're looking to do here is explain how the cross-sector or different sectors can come together to kind of expand that safety net in terms of income maximisation, and how if we can stop people falling through the cracks by including income maximisation as part of our customer journeys, it's going to feed back into that whole system and just make the world a better place, basically. So what we want to do is kind of explain today how these journeys come together, how a customer may, through the Nationwide Building Society app, stumble upon income maximisation, or maybe be signposted there by the collections team or the vulnerable support team. And as a result of that, may end up on a social tariff with Southern Water. So something that started with the Building Society can end with a saving with the water company. Next slide, Corinne, please. So when I talk about income maximisation, we're referring to our Better Off calculator. And as I said in my intro at the beginning, I was brought onto the team at Policy and Practice to replicate the success we'd seen with our Better Off calculator in the public sector, namely the local authority space in the main, housing associations as well. We want to replicate that success in the private sector, so credit and collections, so telecoms, banks, building societies, debt collection agencies, debt purchasers, insolvency practitioners, creditors, anybody that's kind of dealing with money. And as we've grown that footprint in this, what we call new sectors at the moment, we now want to focus on kind of bringing that together and this kind of cross-sector initiative. And how do we do that? So kind of talk around the Better Off calculator. It's our income maximisation tool. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's a self-serve tool. Ultimately, it is used on the front line by the likes of debt advisors, Citizens Advice, for example. It works as an example here. It's you can check your eligibility in just 30 seconds, just by answering 7 or 8 simple questions. So we ensure that it's a really smooth customer journey, in that people who don't have eligibility for unclaimed benefits aren't then going through the kind of full 7-minute long calculation. It's a dynamic form with intelligent questions, so you only answer the questions that are relevant to you. It will add and delete questions depending on that. We also are the only calculator provider to offer human-to-human journey support. We have built the calculator to ultimately make a really complex system, which is the benefit system, simple. However, it can still seem quite complex, but you can rest assured that when you hand off one of your customers into our income maximisation journey, into the Better Off calculator, we can hold a hand throughout that as well with human support. We also signpost the next steps. So we don't just kind of say, hey, you're eligible for A, B, and C. There are clear instructions on what to do next. You can create action plans in there as well with signposting. As an organisation, you have a comprehensive case management system where you can see the outcome of those calculations for your customers. And we also have a real-time MI data reporting suite, which shows you your impact in terms of how many people went through the journey, kind of how many benefits were uncovered, and what was unclaimed. I think Ian's going to touch on that from Nationwide a little bit later. Next slide, please, Corinne. So just here's an example of some of the organisations we work with. And just to kind of touch lightly, we don't want to go through the whole kind of demonstration of the calculator and the product today, but this is just an example of some of the deployments that we see in some of the sectors that we're working with. So a really simple deployment here would be just including this on your website, a place to signpost people to. We see organisations use this. One, it's great for consumer duty if you're dealing with regulated debt, or regulated credit. It's fantastic for your reputation as well. I think it shows tangible support. Ian's going to touch on some of the coverage that Nationwide have had, for example. And ultimately, it prevents and resolves debt for your clients. So it can be deployed as a simple link to your website. Also works on mobile, so that would be the same thing that you saw on the previous slide. And I think the slides will be shared afterwards, so you can feel free to take a look at those. Next slide, please, Corinne. In terms of the customer journey, so we see organisations deploy the calculator link onto the website. That can be fully white labelled as well, as you'll see in the examples when we share the slides. We also have we're an API first organisation, so we have a simple API which allows you to integrate the calculator into your existing platforms. So, for example, we work with DebtStream, and we are part of the self-serve collections portal. We're really proud of this integration because we know that signposting isn't always enough, because one of the reasons that the £24 billion of benefits go unclaimed every year is that lack of awareness, excuse me. And people think that those benefits aren't for them. So signposting isn't enough sometimes. So what we do here is you are invited to self-serve with your debt using the DebtStream portal. As part of that, we go through a simple income and expenditure process. Within the background, via the API, unknown to the customer completing the income expenditure or the affordability check, we're actually carrying out a benefit check in the background as well. So not only are we presenting a disposable monthly income amount and presenting payment plans, we're actually saying, oh, it looks like you could be eligible for A, B, and C with the amount. The customer then looks at the benefit, sees if they're missing out on anything, carries through and completes a full benefit assessment. This gives organisations the option to set up a payment plan for the customers when there wasn't any disposable monthly income to start with. So currently you would do an income expenditure form, and there are kind of two outcomes. One, there's enough affordability to proceed and set up a payment plan, or two, there isn't. This adds that third option. So there isn't enough disposable monthly income to move to a payment plan. However, there is eligibility for benefits. And it also adds, I think, maybe a fourth option, which is that there is enough disposable monthly income to set up a payment plan, and also eligibility for unclaimed benefits, which just makes that payment plan more sustainable. We're also integrated with the likes of Initio AI. So Initio specialise as a third-party provider of income expenditure forms. And again, it's the same type of integration. The customer's carrying on through the exercise to determine their income expenditure. And in the background, the benefit check is happening. We can also integrate with CRMs, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please, Corinne. So I've kind of been on my soapbox and maybe banging the drum for 2 years around this now in the kind of credit and collections creditor space. And I've definitely seen a shift around income maximisation. We see the FCA mention this a lot more these days as well. They've kind of put the head above the parapet, which is fantastic to see. I'm hoping that when they look at reviewing consumer duty, this will form a part of that, maybe as best practice. And it's just that it's being seen now as no longer a nice to have, or nor a tick box exercise. And I think the introduction of consumer duty certainly helped with that. But it's a useful preventive tool that prevents harm, and it's a tool which empowers its users to resolve and prevent debt. And by embedding it into your journeys, like I say here, you're not just fixing a siloed problem, you're actually expanding that financial safety net and bringing together this same household different bill. If the bank misses this customer, then the council will catch them. If the council misses them, the internet provider can catch them. in a nutshell, if everybody's carrying out income maximisation, we just reduce the cracks that customer can fall through. And also, if the bank do the income maximisation for the customer, then that helps the customer pay the council tax. The local authority win as well. So no matter which organisation a customer contacts, then we can push them towards, future financial stability. And that's why I think it's now become an essential part of any customer journey in terms of assessing affordability.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob. Great. Thank you so much for setting the scene for today's webinar. And now I would like to invite Ian to join me on stage, or on the virtual stage.
Yes, virtual stage. Yeah,
Wonderful.
thanks, Corinne. And yeah, building on kind of what Rob's been talking about, I guess I'd like to just spend a few minutes, just sort of talking through how we've brought the policy and practice calculator to our customers at Nationwide, how we've tried to create a unique proposition in this space. I'll also touch on the kind of the results we've had, and sort of the experience we've tried to build around it, and crucially, I guess, what the insight that sort of drove us to delivering this proposition is. So then, Corinne, I think moving on to the next slide, this just tries to give a bit of a summary of some of the insight in this space, which kind of led us to developing a customer proposition. So at the start, I mentioned that our team look after both some of these big strategic initiatives like Fairer Share, but we also have a real obsession around the customer experience and the needs, the kind of day-to-day environment, the lived experience, if you like, of our customer base. And initially, the thinking for this kind of proposition came out of a lot of the insight that we were seeing back in the, I guess, first wave, if you like, of the cost of living crisis. Unfortunately, that really feels like it's starting to build again. But this was probably back 2022, 2023, when there was a lot of concern over cost of living at that point. And we started really focusing on what are the needs of our customers. We were in frequent conversation with our customers via a series of focus groups and listening sessions. And one of the topics that just came up again and again was this concern around day-to-day finances, concern around cost of living. And then that, coupled with some of the really powerful insight coming out of policy and practice, really pointed us towards delivering a service like this. And of course, 24 billion of government benefits go unclaimed annually. That's the headline stat. It's a massive number. And, if we could only move the dial on that, a fraction of a percent, that would be really impactful for our customers and would be in the tens of millions of pounds easily. And of course, for some households, that means that they are missing out on, 400, 500 potentially pounds per month in some cases, which is, life-changing sums if we can get that money back into the pockets of those customers. But of course, the challenge in this space is that the barriers to claiming are so strong. So as part of the preparation for this proposition, we commissioned some of our own research, and we understood just how strong those barriers are. And almost if we give customers any chance to fall out of this process or to disengage from a proposition in this space, they will do that. Even if we can take them through a calculator, they've still got a big hurdle to get over in terms of actually then claiming and getting, kind of navigating and getting through the complexity of the benefit system. So bearing all that in mind, that led us to thinking perhaps there's a role that Nationwide could play in this space. So I suppose I've kind of answered question 2 a little bit already in terms of why we're working on this. Crucially, it just responds to the needs of our customers in that space. The customers we spoke to in the research also talked about how it's a good fit for the Nationwide brand, and it's something almost they would expect us to do, for the customers, for the members of the building society. It, of course, unlocks value if we can deliver those benefits back into the pockets of our customers, and very much it aligns with our strategy of banking, but fairer, more rewarding, and crucially here for the good of society. So that's kind of like the insight, what led us towards developing the proposition. I'll now just kind of touch on exactly sort of what the proposition is a little bit. So Corinne, please, on the next slide. And I guess at the core of it, essentially what we've done is to reskin the policy and practice benefits calculators that Rob mentioned, and I guess kind of put a bit of a Nationwide sort of customer experience over the top of them. Corinne, I think if you click on that video, hopefully hopefully, fingers crossed, that will play. Cool. Yeah, so just as we go through, what you can see here, this is the web page. So somebody initially lands on this page on our website, which is available from the main navigation at the top of our .co.uk pages. Essentially, we've got some information about benefits, and then crucially, if you click as you've done there, you can go through to what we call the benefits or the better off indicator. And that's the first of the two key core parts of the proposition. So this is the 7 to 9 question indicator that Rob mentioned. So we've kind of put our own sort of flavor on this. We've worked with our user experience teams to try and make that process just as seamless and as frictionless as possible for customers. And that comes back to my earlier point around, if we give any chance for a customer to disengage from this process, given how strong the barriers are to claiming in this space, we're going to lose customers. Customers are going to drop out of the process. So we really try to take that indicator API and think about how can we build that in the way that gets people in the ballpark of, should I be investigating this more in the most straightforward, seamless, effortless way. And also, if there's somebody that's going through that journey and they're clearly not eligible, we don't want to risk dissatisfaction, complaints, etc., through wasting customers' time, essentially. So if there's somebody that's very clearly not going to be eligible, then we want to tell them that as soon as we can, and essentially avoid wasting their time through going through the next phase of the proposition. So that's what the first stage indicator does. It's available through app, through .co.uk, which was on the video here, and crucially via telephone as well. And the telephone service, I can come back to this in a minute, but this is something that we are really, really proud of at Nationwide. We're really aware of the level of vulnerability perhaps in this audience and the need for additional support alongside digital tools. So we've developed a free telephone service, which essentially takes customers through exactly the same experience that they would get either on the website or on the app, but enables them to speak to a benefits expert for free, and go through the same questions and get to a result, with the helping hand, as it were, of an expert in benefits. And we're the only financial services provider to offer something like that. It's a real clear differentiator for us. It demonstrates the value that we're giving back to members. And of course, it really helps serve customers that perhaps are less digitally capable or just want to speak to an expert in this space. So then on to the next slide. This then just shows a bit more of the detail of the proposition. So again, if you click play, perfect. Hopefully this one works. Cool. Yeah, so then essentially if a customer's gone through that initial indicator and it shows that there is an opportunity for them, perhaps they're missing out on something, or we think that they should be investigating that further, we'll direct them to what we call the full calculator. So this is hosted on Policy and Practices website, and essentially takes people through that more sort of complete calculation. It's about 25 questions, so it does take a bit more time for the customer to go through that. But it gives them a really, really accurate result of what we think they should be claiming, of course, based on the information that the customer has told us. And we can get down to a really good level of detail for that. So for example, if the customer tells us that they live in a certain, or when they tell us that they live in a certain area and they might be eligible for maybe council tax discount, if we identify that they're not claiming that, then instead of just pointing them to generic information about council tax support, we can direct them to the relevant section on that local authority's website to try and again make that process as simple and as straightforward for customers as possible, to reduce the risk of people not engaging or dropping out of the process. So essentially that's the overview of the proposition. We've kind of reskinned, we've put a nationwide take on the policy and practice tools. We think this delivers a really, really compelling service for our customers. But of course, it's not just limited to our customers, because as I say, we've got that telephone service, which of course is available to anyone, actually, not just a nationwide customer. And that's a real standout feature for us and a real differentiator. So then moving on, I think then the next slide shows just a bit of the, here we go, a bit of the media reaction that we've had to the proposition. So we've done a couple of press releases. We did launch in June last year, so we've been live for well, just coming up to exactly a year. Actually, it'll be a year and a few weeks. And so we've done a couple of press releases in that time to just raise some awareness of the proposition. And we've had some really, really positive coverage. I think we had in total over 50 pieces of media coverage, a lot of them focusing on the success we've had so far and that the amount of people that have gone through the journey and identified some support. And also focusing on the telephone service, the uniqueness of that in the market, and the support that can offer to especially audiences that are less digitally capable or perhaps have more vulnerability present. So yeah, we've been really, really pleased with the coverage that we were able to get off the back of this. You know, the only thing I would like to change about these press cuttings would be the fact that some of them still seem to use quite old Nationwide logos, like that one on the bottom left. That's like 2005 or something, I think. So yeah, hopefully the standard can update that. But you know, we're really happy with the headlines and what they were talking about in terms of the highlighting the benefits that we can bring as part of the proposition. So then the final slide just touches on a bit of the results that we've had so far. So as I mentioned, we're really, really happy with how it's going. We've not done a huge amount of promotion yet. That's definitely something that we're looking to do more of. But yeah, since launch, which was the 26th of June last year, uncovered over 75 million of annual unclaimed benefits now amongst around 11,000 households. And yeah, as I say, very happy with that, but we really want to see how we can progress this more. We really think there is more we can do in this space. So we've got a few considerations for what we want to do next with the proposition. So the first one, channel of choice, I suppose, is key for us. You know, the telephone line is a big standout feature. The other area which Nationwide is particularly strong in is our branch network. We've got a branch promise in place, a commitment not to close any branches until at least 2030, and we have the largest single brand branch network in the UK. So that gives us a real opportunity to be able to talk to customers face to face about the benefits, service, and about the fact that people are missing out. We can also do that in particular areas where we might know that there is higher levels of unclaimed benefits. So for us, that's something we're really looking to tap into and really looking to build a stronger proposition in that space. Second one is calculated development. So we're continually talking to our customers, understanding how we can improve things, how we can make that experience even more straightforward, even faster, even simpler for customers to get to a result. And I guess particularly as a customer proposition team, we have an absolute obsession around getting the customer experience right and delivering as best we can for our customers in that sense. So again, that's something we're continually working with policy and practice on, just to make small tweaks here and there. UI changes, can we update the content of the website? Are there bits that aren't working for people? We're looking at all of that data, all of that analytics, and we've commissioned some of our own research in that space as well. And then finally, kind of last mile, and I guess by that we mean anything following the end of the calculator. So what are those customers actually doing once they get that result? How can we make it more simple, more straightforward for them to actually get the pounds back in the pocket, almost, if that makes sense? Because that's what really matters. You know, it's great having a good number on the screen and showing that we've identified some missed benefits, but actually what we really want to do is ensure that our customers are getting those benefits back into their account. Ideally a nationwide account, but of course the service is open to anyone in the industry. So we've been having many conversations and doing a lot of work on that, working very closely with policy and practice to see what we can deliver in that space. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully that's a useful overview of what we've done, why we've done it, some of the insight that's driving the proposition and where we'd like to go next with it. But of course, more than happy at the end for any comments or questions, etc. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Corinne.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ian. And yes, as Ian just said, if you have any questions at any point, do feel free to post them in the question tab on the right, and we will make sure to answer as many of them as possible during the Q&A and the panel at the end. Thank you so much, Ian. Now, just before we move on to our next presentation, we would like to do a little poll just to get a little bit of an idea of where everyone on the call is at the moment regarding income maximization. So I will be launching a poll. So if you are able to answer it, that would be great. It should pop on your screen just about now. So the question is, are income maximization tools currently part of your customer vulnerability strategy? So yeah, obviously it's either yes if you're actively using those tools, or no, not really. And if there's a particular reason, if you want to share that, please feel free to do so, again using the question box, or if you are currently considering it, if it's a part of your roadmap. And Ed, I know you probably have a few comments to make depending on where everyone is. Now,
Yeah.
let's take a little look. I can see that answers are currently coming in. I don't know if you can see them too, Ed, from your side.
Yeah, I can see a bunch coming through. I'm assuming the 64% who are currently using our such tools are hopefully using ours. I know that a lot of the attendees are people who work with us already. So lots of advice bureaus I can see here all today, and those from local authorities and housing associations. That's fantastic to see the impact we're already having. And if you're at the moment, or you're not at the moment, or you're considering it, feel free to have a chat with us. We're always happy to reach out and share best practices. I mean, for sharing all the great work that Nationwide is doing. We'll see soon hear from Nicky, but always happy to discuss what you want to do, because what fits for one organisation may not fit for yourselves. So always happy to discuss it. But very interesting, yeah. So 66% saying yes, we actively use such tools. See 40% saying no, not at the moment. We've got another 14% who are considering it. Always feel free to reach out, as we mentioned, and 6% who are other. And quite interested to see perhaps towards the end of the webinar what these other versions are. I assume it's partnered organisations like triage support, and like we see a lot of the time with people partnering up with us as Vice Bureau partners as well. So that's fantastic to see. But yeah, very interesting poll. So I'm going to close the poll and we'll get back to the rest of the webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill that out. It's always interesting to understand where the industries are at. I mean, we spend all our time shouting about the amazing work that organisations are doing, and it's just want to understand how much the impact we're seeing. So I'm Ed, the software account manager at Policy and Practice, and as mentioned earlier, I work with a wide range of organisations, but really my focus has been the utility sector in the last year or so. That's been a big old area where I really want to make the most amount of impact. And today I'll be talking about the lessons we've learned from about vulnerability in the lens of data sharing, and what you can do in order to use the data available from yourselves as organisations and from wider organisations, and connecting to you together in that space. So as a reminder, we have heard earlier from Nationwide, and we have also Southern Water here today, and you're probably wondering why those two organisations are here together to talk about this network, and this is where I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. So the Better Off calculator, we have a functionality understood as apply once. So we've been around for 10 plus years now, and we've been really good at telling people what benefits they should be getting. But for those of you who read our £24 billion report and the estimation of number of unclaimed benefits, the reason why that number is so high is a lot of individuals, they may know what they're missing out on, but there might be 20, 30 different applications that they have to complete. And if you're an individual who's currently in a process where you're perhaps struggling to think about how am I going to pay my energy bill, get food on the table, and you're struggling with mental health associated with debt, and you probably don't want to go through that journey. And so we realized we've got a unique proposition where we have so much rich information being collected on the calculator. And we work with a wide range of organizations, from your citizens vice bureaus to your housing associations to local authorities to water companies, DNOs, energy companies, and tier one banks like Nationwide. We can connect these organizations together. And what we realized is the Better Off calculator, via the industry support information that we held within there and the data that we already collect from working with other organizations, that we can collect these two by creating a holistic vulnerability process. So what I mean by this is, if I'm a citizen vice bureau and I'm going through the calculator and my postcode pops up and says, look, looks like your Southern Water customer. And as the work that we do with Southern Water, which Nicky's going to go into in a bit, we can tell whether or not they're eligible for social tariff. And then rather than just directing you to a page and making you go through another application, what we realize we can do through the explicit consent is just share that data across to you. And that's kind of what we're going to go into a little bit more detail here today. We try and make sure that the services that we provide is varied. Like what we do with housing associations, as mentioned earlier, it's completely different to what we do with our water companies. And so what we're trying to make is a customer-friendly self-serve solution that connects all your vulnerability strategy into one place. You may have discretionary support in one place. You may have a partner triage organization, and you may be trying to get people to apply for the benefits they're eligible for. And what we're trying to do is create one tool that does all of that. And what this allows you to do is connect with our wider network of users. I think we work with around 350 plus organizations now. And what we're trying to do is connect these together into one coherent ecosystem. we go to the next slide, please, Karine, we're going to go talk about how that data passporting works in a little bit more detail and some of these examples. I mean, you saw some of the logos on the previous slide of all the different sectors we work with, but essentially it's our tell me once approach. And this is something that the industry has been talking about for such a long time, and we haven't really seen a great example of it. A lot of the time, the systems are, we've got a tool here, we've got a partner you can go reach out to if you call this number or reach out to this email. And we've also got some support here. And that's different applications sporadically spread across the organization. And so what we've enabled is a one-stop shop for vulnerability. And we've got two examples here today that I've got shared on my screen, but one is an amazing partnership we've done with SSEN, a shout out to Olivia Worthington, who I think is attending today. And they're raising awareness to their priority services register, which you now can apply for a direct API through our calculator. We've got Nicky about to talk about the amazing work we're doing in Southern Water, but also something that we want to raise awareness to is that we can connect triage partnerships into one system as well. So there are utility providers and also financial services providers who work really closely with a third-party organization, and we call that the last mile project of the calculator tells you what benefits you're missing out on. And then you've got to direct yourself to another third-party organization who could perhaps help more vulnerable customers. Well, instead of just saying, go speak to that local cab, we can send data through explicit consent directly to that advice bureau. And that tends to be our legal gateway, is the explicit consent throughout the calculating. Do you want to share your details with this advice bureau? This is the amazing work that they do. And if they do, we send an API directly to that organization. And the cab doesn't go through a 30-minute INE form. They just open up and go, all right, I can see here, this is what you shared with us. Can I just make sure it's correct? And you spend your time focusing on impact rather than just retelling your story again and again. So that's the amazing work we're doing, and Nicky will go into that in a little bit more detail. But I want to focus on as another project in regards to data sharing, which is on the next slide, please, Karine. And that is a project that, if you've heard us speak before, you've seen the webinars, or you've engaged with me before, you've probably seen me talk about this till I'm blue in the face, because it's been my absolute passion project the last year as well. And this is a campaign that we did when the first time we've seen benefits being auto-enrolled. And this is a campaign where Thames Water came to us and said, look, we've got this challenge where we're trying to find households that aren't engaging with us, that we know need help. And they refer to internally as the hidden pockets of poverty, where they were really trying to tackle water poverty, really trying to get more households who are vulnerable onto their social tariffs, but they didn't know who they are due to linguistic barriers, cultural barriers, vulnerability barriers, perhaps digital exclusion. And so what we've realized with our other product called the Lift dashboard, which takes administrative data from councils and churns that for a policy engine, which is basically the calculator. And we can use that data to find those households for Thames Water. Now, it's not a case of a utility company accessing this tool because of the legal gateways that we have to explore. But through the Digital Economy Act, we know that there is ability for us to do water poverty tackling with this data set. So we, as a trusted third-party data processor, we're able to take one independent controller's data, which is Thames Water, who gave us their billings data for those in arrears. And we took the local authority's low-income household data through our Lift dashboard. We matched the two to be able to identify the households that we could see. And then we modeled in the social tariff of Thames Water. And then we just fed back a big old data set to Thames Water to say, here is all the households that are missing out on a social tariff. Now, we did this with one local authority, where it was Richmond and Wandsworth Council, where we found 1,234 households. And we just also enrolled them. And that meant 1,200 households woke up the next day with a 50% discount on their water bill. No application, no validation, no need for, or the onus of the vulnerable household to figure out that that scheme exists and actually go apply for it. And that means that individual didn't have to spend the next day worrying about that bill. That was such a fantastic campaign that it was a bit of a no-brainer to expand it across the GLA, and absolute shout out to Thames Water that auto-enrolled this across the GLA with I think around 18 or so local authorities with the highest amount of water arrears to focus on as like a phase 2 approach. And you can see the amazing stats there. £10 million of auto-enroll benefits across London to impacting around 25,000 households. And that's to date. There are still a couple of local authorities to go part of phase 2. And we're now already planning phase 3 and about how we can expand this further and modify it to make it even a smoother process. We've had amazing examples of how this can now be approached with different sectors, with housing associations matching rent arrears to local authority data, we've now also got energy companies interested to see what they can learn from the practices shown by the water sector. And so what we really want to encourage people is to think about how can we connect together and use those data sets together, and how can we target households rather than what is being the standard system, the onus being on the individual coming to you. So that's a little bit about some of the amazing work we can do, but no better person to speak about it than Nicky, who's been fantastic in launching the Southern Water Better Off calculator. So I'll pass back to her.
Thank you so much, Ed. Yeah, it's wonderful to see all of this impact, and especially with the difference that it makes to people's lives. But okay, let's move straight on to our next presentation with Nicky.
Yeah, thanks, Corinne, and morning, everyone. So yes, I'm Nicky. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm the Affordability and Vulnerability Lead at Southern Water. My passion is about making sure, as I said previously, that we've got the right support in place and that reaches the right people. So what I want to do is spend the next 10 minutes or so just talking through why we're working with policy in practice and what that journey looked like for our customer, and most importantly, what the outcome and the benefits of that are for our customer. So I'll move straight on to what the business challenge was for us, so why we identified this. So next slide, if you would, Corinne, please. Perfect, thank you. So as part of our vulnerability strategy, one of our key objectives is to reduce the number of customers impacted by water poverty. So there's lots of statistics around water poverty and how this does impact each household. But for me, the stark one and the most easy one to relate to is one from Consumer Council for Water, where they estimate that 1 in 5 customers is going to struggle to pay their bill. So for me, that's a really stark statistic. And if you think there's over 100 of us on the call, so that's, you know, 20, 25, 30 of us that are going to be experiencing difficulty paying our bill. So as a water company, we have a responsibility to raise awareness of all of the support options that we have in place. Now, we have lots of support in place. That might be a reduced tariff. So for households on low income, we can reduce the amount of their bill, might be able to cap a customer's water bill due to a medical reason, or we have debt matching schemes. And we have a responsibility to try and make sure that as many people as possible are aware of that support. And as I said previously, it reaches the right people. So we were looking to target that access, that support to our customers. So by working in partnership is one of the ways that we do that, to make sure that customers that have already asked for help in other areas, so it might be that they've used the Better Off calculator either on the government website. CCW also have the Better Off calculator on their website, as do many of our colleagues in other water companies. So if a customer has already asked for that support, along with Citizens Advice, we work in partnership with Citizens Advice as well, then we know that those customers are likely need additional support from us as well. Now, one of the other things that we were really keen to improve on is our actual internal applications process. So that was really outdated and clunky and hadn't been reviewed for a period of time. So, you know, that it was up to 5 pages long and was taking customers 10 to 15 minutes to make that application, and was proving to be a real barrier to customers accessing all of the support I've just spoken about. So along with all of that, we wanted to improve the customer outcome. So this was our key challenge. There's you know, it's very evident that improving customer outcomes improves customer well-being, and it's known that improved customer well-being can then improve engagement. And that's what we're looking to do, is improve engagement with those customers so that they've reached out, they've asked for support, we can look to what support we've got for them, and, you know, improve their financial resilience as well. So next slide, please, Corinne. So that was the business challenge that we were looking at. So what was the solution? And this is how we came to be working with policy and practice. So within my role, I've been aware of policy and practice for a couple of months within my role. As I say, we knew that they're on other benefit websites such as the government with CCW, and our colleagues were also using them. I'd heard really great things. So when policy and practice approached us, it was a no-brainer really. And this is when we started our journey of streamlining the support journey that we have for our customers. So we worked really closely to look at our additional, our existing financial application process. And Ed was probably sick to the sight of me by the end of this, because it was a very intense, long process for us to actually get everybody on board, include our data protection officers. But we looked to streamline the criteria that we were asking from our customers. As I said previously, it was up to 5 pages long. So we stripped all of that out, and Policy and Practice were able to build us a tool, a solution that only asked the relevant questions that we needed to ask those customers to receive our support, but which also indicated the support that they were already receiving. So that made it a much more straightforward journey for everybody involved. The process was pre-populated, or is pre-populated, so customers don't have to do very little other than answer a pre-populated drop-down question. And one of the key things that the solution we've provided does is it matches support to customers' eligibility criteria. So previously, a customer would approach us, they would come onto our website, they would decide which support they wanted to apply for, whether that was a reduced tariff, whether that was a debt matching scheme, whether they wanted to cap their bill because they had a medical requirement. So the customer was then deciding which support was suitable for them. And quite often, I know Ian referred to it in his presentation, that led to disappointment, because actually there is a set eligibility criteria, and sometimes that criteria didn't meet that customer's requirements. So what the tool now does is it takes all of that information in that streamlined process and that journey for their customer, and it actually looks to see what they're eligible for. And it will say to the customer that they're possibly eligible for this tariff, or if they're not eligible as well. So again, preventing that disappointment or those difficult conversations or complaints that might come off the back of it. Now, as part of that overall journey, and I really wish I'd put a demonstration like Ian did in his presentation. So apologies, I haven't got that visual for you guys to see. But what once the customer has input all of that information onto the application form, they see an immediate benefits indicator. So it's telling them exactly what benefits that they may be eligible for that they haven't already claimed. And that's very stark in presented to them on that form. So yeah, next platform, please. Sorry, next slide, thank you. So I've gone through lots of the benefits already in the slides that we've looked at, but I wanted to really focus on them here on this slide and go through the exact benefits of using the joined up support on the Better Off calculator. So I've spoken about increased reach. So our aim was to increase reach, and with the Apply Once platform that Ed spoke about in his presentation, that means that customers using any of other providers that are using the Better Off calculator can be passported through to our support if they're eligible or if they're within our area. So that's a really important piece, and we've recently introduced that, and we're just currently monitoring under the reporting process that the Better Off calculator provides for us as well. So improved customer outcomes, as I say, you'll see on the next slide, but the highlighting the benefits that are missed out on improving the customer's income through that process is leading to an improved customer outcome. And we know that actually by income maximization reduces customers' financial stress, and it improves that engagement process with customers as well. And it's all about that engagement process. Once that customer's in contact with us, there's so much more support that we can provide to that customer. We also have a bespoke vulnerability team, a free phone team, where customers can contact us, and we can then map out that customer journey exactly for them. And any support that isn't part of our Better Off and social tariff calculator, such as our hardship scheme, we can then look to involve customers in that engagement as well. So I spoke also about the improved efficiency for our agents. So previously on our financial assistance application, as I said, the customer decided on which support they wanted to apply for, but they weren't also always eligible for it. That required lots of communication between our team and our customers. There was lots of disappointment. It also meant that our team had to go through the whole application and identify which support matched the customer the best. This new tool does all of that for us. So the efficiency in our administration is huge as well. So a really, really good benefit for us, as well as our customers. So next slide, please, Corinne. So here, this is the really exciting bit for me, and this is the most important bit. So this really brings to light how successful this journey has been, not only in helping us raise awareness, but those improved outcomes that I spoke about for our customers. So we partnered with Policy in Practice using this tool. It went live last June, so very similar to Nationwide. And since then, we've had over 17,000 households using the indicative benefits calculation through our financial assistance form. So in total, that has identified that just under £16 million worth of benefits, and that includes those already being claimed, have been identified through the calculator. Now, if you look below, 4 million of those benefits identified are showing as unclaimed benefits. So unclaimed benefits identified for customers through our calculator. That's almost a quarter of all of the benefits identified. And when we look back through, as I say, the calculator provides an excellent reporting tool which allows us to look very quickly about all the support that's being provided, what our customers are missing out on, and what that means for them. It's showing us that over 8,000 households were missing out on benefits. So looking at that, that's around £500 per household customer. And like Ian said, that's a life-changing amount. It'll be the difference between that water poverty barrier and being lifted out of water poverty as well. So overall, we've been able to support, in total, nearly 18,000 customers through this calculator, but making life-changing differences for over 8,000 of those customers. And so for us, it's a no-brainer, and we look forward to many more years in improving the service we can provide through this tool to our customers. And that's it from me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nicky. And, once again, it's just so great to see the difference that it can make to people's lives. So thank you for sharing all of those numbers. Yeah. All right. Well, we are now entering the very last part of our webinar, which is going to be the Q&A. So I would like to invite all of our speakers to join me back on screen. So I can see that we've been receiving quite a few questions throughout the webinar. Thank you so much for all of those. So let's just dive straight in. So Bruce, I see that you've been sending a few questions in. Let's start with one of them. So Bruce, you're from the Leicester South Food Bank, and you were saying that you are currently applying to Leicestershire County Council to deliver 2 streams of the Community Resilience Fund. So you were asking, how can you link it to your application? How can you link us in to your application to deliver this? Ed, if you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, always feel free to reach out to us to discuss this in a bit more detail. But essentially, if the Leicestershire County Council has LIFT dashboard in place, what they'll be able to do is use that tool to be able to identify those who would be eligible for that additional support. And then we can use either our auto-enrollment capabilities, like we discussed in the Thames project, or even enable individual reach outs via the LIFT dashboard through our Better Off calculator. What I mean by this is the LIFT dashboard can auto-enroll households and get that targeted funding directly to them. It could also be used to pre-populate the Leicestershire Food Bank's Better Off calculator tool for the income maximisation support. And if we have an existing system where they're eligible for CRF and we've identified the Better Off calculator, ideally you can apply through it. Obviously, we'd have to set that up, so we'll always have to have a chat. Just feel free to reach out to us, Bruce, and I'm more than happy to discuss it further.
Yeah, and I believe, Bruce, you had another question, which was delivering the system. Do you, as an organisation, need any qualifications or FCA approval? I believe this one would be a question for Rob.
Yeah, really simple one, Bruce. Absolutely not. A benefit check does not constitute financial advice at all, so there's absolutely no need. As I mentioned before, in terms of qualifications, we hold monthly training webinars, and we have a training team as well. So there are no kind of qualifications needed as such. And throughout the calculator, there are help and tool tips, and as I mentioned, that human-to-human support as well. So in short, the answer is no.
Fantastic. And our next question, I believe, is for Nicky. So this one is from Chris from Tynebridge. I'm terribly sorry. I'm French. My accent is usually terrible with names. So Chris is asking, so the 8,000 households for for SWW is that for extra benefits and or increase in existing benefits?
So yes, thanks, Chris. So those are the number of households that the calculator identified are missing out on benefits. So from the information that they input for the financial assistance application, the benefits then, the calculator then looked at the benefits they were receiving and identified those that they were missing out on based on the criteria that they put in. So yeah, over 8,000 that were missing out on benefits that they may have been eligible for. Did that answer the question?
I believe so. Next, we also have a question from Asma. And again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. So you were asking eligibility for the Thames Water Help schemes means that enrollment is no longer possible, AOT enrollment. So residents now need to provide proof of their income. So what changes are being made to accommodate this?
Yeah, I can chip into that. So the LIFT dashboard in itself has income within the data that the local authority provides. So we are still auto-enrolling. We've got year 3 ready in place, where we've got the income data already, and that's validated by the DWP. So it's absolutely fine to carry on with the auto-enrollment campaign. So no accommodations needed. Asper, more than happy to chat about the project and see if there's anything we can do to link up with the work we're doing with Thames and perhaps the work that you're doing yourself at your council.
And on the topic of utilities and water companies, Susan from Hartlepool was asking do we know whether this functionality could be available with the water companies that cover the Hartlepool area?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Hartlepool, I believe, is supplied by Anglian Water. That's actually our first ever Better Calculator customer for the water sector, who we know very well. And we're always happy to have a chat. Obviously, it depends on whether or not the water company would like to target that area. But Suzanne, always happy to connect you with our Anglian Water relationship and just see if there's anything we can get going, because I'd love to spread this further. I think you're muted there, Karine, and I'm assuming you're reading the Markman's question.
Yes, I am. Sorry. Mark just sent us a question saying that they are a housing association about to begin their partnership with the local authority who will be using LIFT. So they will be sending customers in rent arrears. They will be looking to maximize benefits for these customers. So would this also include referrals to private sector partnerships as in today's session, or is that for the LA to decide?
I guess it's a little bit for the LA side as well. I think the big idea for Apply Once is to extend that out to wider partnerships. Things we have talked about and the possibilities in the future, because we've done a lovely, fantastic project, British Gas Energy Trust, where we have a question saying, who's your supplier, how do you pay your bill? And we identify all the support pages that's out there, but also like funding pots that you might be eligible for. And we thought perhaps if we get more banks that follow the guidance that Nationwide are doing, we could actually include questions perhaps in the calculator saying, what provider your bank is, then connect them with your local bank to be able to get that extra support if we've got the right setup in place. So that's something that we'd love to explore a little bit further. In terms of the LIFT dashboard with a housing association, I guess the major focus is what we can do to connect your insights to the local authority insights, and that should be the focus, perhaps less about the wider partnership proposals, because with the LIFT data, you can have a better insight into what you can do with your existing tenants. So for example, you could perhaps match those in rent arrears with those in council tax arrears and realise who in your cohort are really the can't payers within your rent arrears process, and perhaps target them with discretionary funding. And that's something I think the lens should be when you're focusing with the housing sector and our LIFT dashboard collaboration. But again, Mark, feel free to reach out. And if you're already going to be working with us, just connect with your account manager to chat about it further.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ed. Rob, I think you also had.
We've got a raised hand, I think.
Yes. Mohinder, if you're able to send your question in through the question tab on the right, that would be wonderful.
Am I allowed to ask a question? Ian, can I put you on the spot, please? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
I think in terms of sharing insight for the people on the call, how did you find working with us and introducing the calculator into your processes and journeys?
Yeah, I definitely talk to that. So I think, I mean, working with policy and practice is great. I think we've cultivated like a really kind of open, honest it almost feels like one team. I think when we catch up, it's not like nationwide policy and practice over here, kind of across the fence. It feels like we are kind of one team with one clear ambition of, how do we get the best outcomes for customers and indeed wider than just nationwide customers in that sense. Delivering the calculator into nationwide, I guess with any kind of large organization, especially a large tier 1 financial services provider, you can imagine the challenges that we have in terms of governance and things like that. So there's obviously quite a lot of work that we had to do to get that live. The biggest challenge, I think, though, for us was around prioritization, because we were essentially trying to deliver something across 3 different channels at once. So coordinating .co.uk plus the build of the indicator API on .co.uk, so on the website, plus doing that in the app, plus getting the telephone journey live, plus getting all of the comms and things like that out to branches and things like that. So arguably 4 channels, really. Trying to get all of that ready to launch at the same day. That was probably the biggest thing for us. How do we coordinate across all of that? But luckily, we've got a really great team in the propositions team. So there was 3 of us that worked really hard to make that happen. But of course, the support of Rob and his team was crucial to that as well.
Thank
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Now, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I can see that we're already 2 or 3 minutes over time. So maybe just one very last question before we end for today. We just had a question in from George asking if the benefit calculation repopulates to each organization, or does the person have to complete one for each provider? Ed?
Yeah, I mean, Nick, you could probably chip in on this as well, but essentially the way we've got it set up is that if we work with someone like Southern Water and we identify that you're a customer there for their postcode automatically and that you are eligible, you'll get a pop-up of the calculator, and then you get a transfer page. And on that transfer page, you don't need to re-enter information that you've already got on the Better Off calculator. It will just be additional questions like account information, contact details, and perhaps consent.
Fantastic. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to add, Nicky, to this.
No, I think Ed covered it really. Yeah, it's as I say, it's all about removing those barriers for customers who are quite often putting in personal or sensitive information, having to repeat themselves over and over again. So yeah, that's where the apply once really steps in.
Fantastic. Great. Well, with this, I think we shall conclude for today. Thank you so much to everyone for, joining us, whether it was as audience members, and of course, a big, big thank you to all of our speakers today. We really appreciate that. And just before we close up for today, if anyone would like to have a chat with us, you can do so by using the QR code that is currently on your screen. I'm also going to post the link in the chat. And we will also be holding another webinar at the end of this month, which will be focused on blueprints for a data-led holistic strategy for employment support. So if any of you are interested in any employment strategies, please feel free to sign up to this. You will get a little pop-up in the survey at the end of this webinar. Now, once again, thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a fantastic afternoon ahead. Thank you.
Bye, all. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.